Welcome to The World Today. I'm Vikas Majid Khan. Today we're talking about an overview of the relationship that is between Pakistan and the United States. A number of news stories have appeared in the press today, and we're going to take excerpts from those stories and continue our discussion on where the trajectory of the Pakistan-US equation is headed. So let's get the conversation started. I'd like to introduce our guests in the studio joining us today. We have Togrul Yamin Saab, and along with him we have Kamar Chima. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. Sir, you must have also gone through those news stories, and they're quite confusing, if I may say. Let's start with the United States accusing the Russians of supplying arms to the Taliban. Now, this is a new one because earlier it was Pakistan being scapegoated and blamed for their failures in Afghanistan, and now they've got the Russians as well. So how do you see this blame game that the United States is engaging in, trying to throw the onus for their failure onto others?
I think there is some element of truth in both things. One, as you said, scapegoating Russia. They can't scapegoat Russia. Russia is a resurgent power. They can't make Russia another Pakistan. And I think there should be some element of Russians trying to take their revenge for what the US did with their Soviet predecessors. So they're getting their own back. We were party to that in the 80s.
It seems like that,
we sent them back. So the Russians I think it's a heaven-sent opportunity if the situation is that bad. Yesterday there was also a bomb blast in a Shia mosque. Where was it? Somewhere in Afghanistan.
Yes, sir. I think it was Herat.
Herat, probably. And before that, again, Nowruz blast.
And it's the IS that is now claiming all these attacks.
They're claiming
and the Taliban are denying them.
Taliban say that actually they are making this as a casus belli. They mentioning that IS is involved makes whatever Russia is doing in Afghanistan kosher, because IS is universally denounced. Nobody's siding with IS. Even you are afraid of IS having their footprints in Pakistan. So IS is considered to be a much bigger rogue than the Taliban. So there can be an element of truth in both things. Americans worried about Russian interference in Afghanistan, and Russia finding it. In fact, I was reading a New York Times article on a person of Ukrainian background who 35 years ago defected and settled in Afghanistan, converted to Islam, took up the name Naik Muhammad. And he's worried now that the Russians are going to come back. I do not know whether New York Times is trying to make a story, a mountain out of a molehill, but there are defectors in Afghanistan who are now worried because they might still be on the list of deserters and things like that. I know in Pakistan Army, deserters, no matter how long you have disappeared from the ranks, have to be court-martialed even after 30 or 40 years. After being court-martialed, perhaps you are let off with a light sentence, but all those people who are defected, they are worried now if the Russians come back. And this fellow Naik Muhammad lives in a village, Kunduz, which is just next to Tajikistan, probably. So there is a paradigm shift. Political, geostrategic changes are taking place.
As they say, whatever goes around comes around. So it seems as if now the tables have turned, and now the Russians are playing the role of the Americans as the Americans played in the 80s. That's what the general drift seems to be from the statements that we've heard, especially the statement that came out from General Nicholson. And that also alludes to what you were saying, sir. Chima Saab, General Saab says that we see a narrative, as Togrul Yamin Saab has also mentioned, that the narrative being used grossly exaggerates the number of ISIS fighters here. And this narrative is used as a justification for the Russians to legitimize their actions of Taliban and provide them some degree of support. How do you see this particular statement? And then he further goes on to say that we've had stories written by the Taliban that have appeared in the media about financial support provided by the enemy, being the Russians. And we've had weapons brought to this headquarters and given to us by Afghan leaders who said this was given to us by the Russians. Now, the Russians have obviously, they've denied any of this involvement in any of such activities. So what do you think is going on, Chima Saab?
Well, I think Americans do not accept any kind of a role that is coming from the Russians. I had a meeting or discussion with the Americans here in Islamabad a year ago, those who came from Afghanistan, and I asked this question pertinently. I asked this question that would you let the Russian role in Afghanistan? And I was told that it is not acceptable in a subtle way. So if you actually want peace in Afghanistan, you actually want stability in the region, then you have to have everybody on the table. If Pakistan, although we have so much concerns having India in Afghanistan or in the discussion or in the quadrilateral arrangement, we have the problem why the Indians are there, then we are not accepting that, but for the broader peace in the region, we can accept that. So why the Russians can't come in, and why the Chinese can't come in, why everybody can't come in, we can sit together. So I think this is where I think the Pakistan need to press the Americans and the Afghans that they should let the Russians come in so that we can have a productive dialogue in Afghanistan, because in a longer run, what we feel is that if the Americans do not let the Russians play a positive role, there will be a dirty role. And the role is not coming from the Russians. Iranians are also playing role. And you know, the Iranians and the Russians are careful, very much careful about what? They're careful about IS, because they believe that if the Islamic movements in Central Asia somehow get colored or somehow get romanticized with the scope of IS from Afghanistan or somewhere from the Middle East, that will be a catastrophic situation. So a new Al-Qaeda will be in the making. You defeated Al-Qaeda, as the world bodies are saying, the international authorities are saying. So you are letting you are letting a new organization with a new ideology to come forward and destabilize the region. So in my personal understanding, I think because these great powers won't let each other to play a major role, there will be a problem for everyone in the region. There will be, you know, peace is the casualty. Afghanistan will face those tough times, and you know, the trouble for Pakistan will increase. And let me tell you, the fault line, the sectarian fault lines in Afghanistan and in Pakistan, they just match. Don't forget that the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi had close contacts with Al-Qaeda, and somehow if Al-Qaeda is going for the sectarian attacks in Afghanistan, there is a probability of such kind of attacks in Pakistan, although Pakistan's security apparatus is very much strong and we have eliminated all those actors or supporters or abettors who are working with the Operation Zarb-e-Zab and Radd al-Fasad, but still the fault lines exist and we have to be very careful. And I think here we need to assert a full pressure to the Americans, and again, I would need to assert that the Afghans should be forced to sit with us, and they should be asked to talk with us, because there is some sort of a thought, there's some sort of an idea that the Afghans do not listen to the Americans when it is about Pakistan. So I think that is very much a serious concern for Pakistan, for the regional states, and for the Russians as well. And you know, the Russian interest or the Russian concerns are getting some sort of legitimized or some sort of positive, as they believe that we will be in Afghanistan to defeat IS. So IS is a legitimate target for the Americans and for the Russians. So how can you say that if our presence there is counterproductive?
For everyone, including
For
Pakistan,
everyone.
including Iran, including China, including Russia, everybody is on the same page.
But there must not be a selective approach to deal with the IS, as we have seen what the regional states in Syria or in Iraq they have been doing. They have the same enemy, but they're fighting differently, in a different way. So I think that should not be the way. Otherwise, if this happens, there's a probability that in next few years there could be a new momentum of war in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, so far the IS in Afghanistan does not have very strong and deep links with the IS in Syria or in Middle East. Had there been strong links, I think the efficacy or the efficiency of the war or the style of the war may have got a more serious momentum. And I think we need to cut all that what is happening, and we need to take everybody on the table for the broader peace in the region.
Well, according to the Russian officials, they've denied American accusations point blank, and they said that they only have limited contacts with the Taliban because they want to bring them to the negotiating table. Then further on, the spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry rejected the claims as absolutely false and alleged that the announcements were designed to justify the failure of the American political and military campaigns in Afghanistan, which is pretty much what we've been saying as well, sir. So do you see this convergence of ideas, and do you think that the rest of the world would be actually listening to Pakistan and Russia and saying that it's the Americans that are creating the mess in Afghanistan?
Probably the world would not listen to Pakistan, but they certainly should listen to Russia, because Russia is a resurgent power. Putin has won an unprecedented fourth term. He's very strong. Xi Jinping has become the president of China for times to come. So these are two countries, major countries in the neighborhood, who have strong leaderships, strong ambitions. Many of them would like to replace United States of America as the regional hegemon, as the major stakeholder in the region. And with Mr. Trump's erratic behavior, it might happen. One never knows. If he continues firing his inner coterie of...
so things are getting even more interesting, as they say, sir. May we live in interesting times.
So
I think it's getting more and more interesting by the day.
I just hope Pakistan does not become further
embroiled in this mess.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be tragic and devastating for us.
When elephant fights, the grass get trampled.
Right, sir. Moving on, we have some positive notes coming out from the US as well, because Pakistan has much to gain from cooperation, says Lisa Curtis. And this she said when attending the Pakistan Day ceremonies in the Pakistani embassy in Washington. Mrs. Azaz Chaudhry was there as well, and she said, as I mentioned, that we have a lot to gain. What that lot is, we really cannot quantify. And then Ambassador Azaz Chaudhry also said that we shouldn't measure Pakistan and US relationship in dollars. Can you, sir, please decipher what is going on?
One thing, the venue suggests that she couldn't have spoken ill of Pakistan. She was a guest. She was invited on a Pakistan Day function. So she had to say something nice to her hosts. She's a hawk. She was here in Pakistan. We know that. You had invited me in one of your programs in which we did discuss her visit to Pakistan. Certainly no country wants to pick up a fight with another country. And Pakistan is too minor a player, I think, in which the Americans should start fighting with Pakistan. But as we know, they've been trying to scapegoat Pakistan for all their failures in Afghanistan. So I think what Lisa Curtis was saying was basically trying to please her hosts. What Azaz Chaudhry was saying was what a good ambassador should say. But all of us understand that the relationship between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is frayed, is very bad.
So you think it was more of just lip service?
I think it was more of a diplomatic statement, and what the Americans are actually doing is not exactly what Lisa Curtis was saying.
Right, sir. Chima Saab, if you further analyze what Ms. Curtis was talking about, she said that we look forward to growing the US-Pakistan relationship, which has seen challenges. So she acknowledged that there have been challenges in the relationship. She also said that we should urge ties that should be based on a shared commitment to defeat all terrorist groups. And she also said that we've had a long relationship of working together and so on and so forth. While there have been challenges faced by the relationship, the countries have a lot to gain by working with each other. Can you please elaborate? What have we gained in the last 70 years? We've been working with them, haven't we?
Yes, we have been working obviously with them for long, but unfortunately, even we failed to have the trust, or we failed to win the trust of each other. This is a very serious dilemma, and I think since the Trump administration is in office, we are going down the road in losing more trust. I think what is happening at the moment, this was an FATF thing, we saw that, and now the 7 companies of Pakistan.
That's right.
Those have been
We were going
banned.
to come to that.
Yes, and I think this is where I think they want to pressurize us, and they're not in a mood. I think that is maybe the second thing, and there are so many things, other things in pipeline. We may see that. And you know what they targeted? They targeted the nuclear thing, because they believe that Pakistan may be part of the NSG, or Pakistan is asking, because the Chinese and the Turks are asking that Pakistan should be, even Pakistan and India are not member of the nuclear NPT, but they're still asking for they want to be in NSG. So the point at the moment is that there are so many things in pipeline, and Americans are not going to be soft on us, but they would want to deal with us, and they want to engage with us. But one thing is there, that the 21st August speech of the President Trump is being implemented in letter and spirit. I had the conversations with certain members who are basically working on that speech. I talked to them, a few months ago in September last year, and I talked to them recently. and they uttered the same words that we are working, we are materializing, we're just working what we can do. And one more thing, recently, 2 weeks ago, a week ago, IEA DG was here in Pakistan. He
Yes.
said that Pakistan has done a great work as far as the peaceful use of the nuclear technology is concerned. So IEA is saying something else. The Americans, they are coming on something different. But although in all these nuclear conferences we had with the President Obama from 2010, 12, 14, 16, all was fine. Now at this point they have reached the point that so and so companies are troublemakers, and so I think recently when the Americans gave a statement that Pakistan have to take the stewardship of its nuclear weapons. That was a very offensive statement, and I think on the very next day, the National Command Authority had a session. On the very next day, in the chairmanship of the Prime Minister, and we gave a very strong message to Washington: do not talk about it. Do not talk about nuclear. That is a very sensitive thing, and we have taken care of all that. The international institutions, the institutionalization of our nuclear weapons, everything is fine. But I think if the Americans are in the mood on a collision, so all what they can do is that they can pick and choose what they want and what they actually believe that here we need to be tough with Pakistan. So, being tough on nuclear, I think it is personally a critical thing. Because that is where they consider that is the weakness or this hard target for them. Because here, and they don't underestimate this, that if in case it was very hard for Pakistanis to forget that the Americans want to get our nuclear weapons or want to snatch the nuclear weapons. There was a theory in Pakistan that, look, the Israelis or the Americans, they want to snatch our nuclear weapons and they want Pakistan to dismantle its nuclear program. And so then the Americans realized, look, we are not going to do this. It's not going to happen. 9/11, their dependence on us. But right now, if they're going to talk on that, I think the mood in Pakistan will be again against the United States. And all the soft power they have used in Pakistan, all the tools of the soft power they have here in Pakistan, the public opinion will be against the United States, and they're going to lose all that support from the society. So I think the Americans must be careful. And one more thing, I believe that I personally believe that from our side there is no a gesture, or there is no statement, or there is no, in a way, we are not dealing with the Americans perhaps the way we could have dealt with them. I personally believe, I may be wrong, because the authorities in Pakistan are meeting. For example, the Prime Minister has met Vice President Pence twice. I think this is against they have lowered the relationship with this to the Pakistan, that the President Trump is not going to meet, and I think the Prime Minister must not have met with the Pence while knowing what is happening. So we have to be, I think the Pakistan must be tough on the United States at certain points, although we cannot be tough. We have less leverage on them as compared to them. But even then, I think we can use this leverage and this tool that the society, public, social media, parliament, and this is how we can get advantage of the democracy or the institutions or the people, that we can tell to them, look, the mood in Pakistan is against the United States, so you have to deal us in an honorable manner, reasonably, so that Pakistan can get maximum out of it. And such kind of sanctions or such kind of gestures are not welcome at any point. And the next elections in Pakistan are coming in.
Well, here's the confusing bit, because in Pakistan, many people do believe that Madam Lisa Curtis is going to be increasing pressure on Islamabad, because she is perceived as a hawk. She's trying to persuade Pakistan to accept the new US strategy for South Asia, which obviously gives India a greater role in Afghanistan. That is something which is anathema to us. And then the statement that Mr. Azaz Chaudhry has made, he said that Pakistan is willing to work with the US officials, including John Bolton, and we'll come to John Bolton later. He was named the new US National Security Advisor after Mr. Tillerson's exit. He says we want peace in Pakistan, we want Pakistan's relationship with the US to strengthen, and we keep this agenda in front of Mr. Bolton as well. Do you think that this is going to have any weight? Will it carry any weight in Washington, sir? Because again, it's very confusing. On the one hand, they're talking about a lot to gain with each other's cooperation. at the same time, they're sanctioning Pakistani companies. So things are really confusing for the average Pakistani when he sees the relationship between the US and Pakistan. It does not have any good, it's rather very foreboding, sir.
Yeah. John Bolton has been a nuclear hawk. He has been, if I'm not wrong, the permanent representative of the US at the United Nations, and he has been one of the lead persons insofar as nuclear disarmament is concerned. So he has been talking about nuclear jihadis also, if I'm not wrong. So I don't think he's going to be soft on Pakistan. McMaster might not have pulled along with Trump, but John Bolton, I don't see any change in the policies of the United States.
There might be a change, sir, a change for the worse.
Perhaps. And,
that's what it seems.
Perhaps. And with his background in nuclear disarmament, he's going to come down heavily on Pakistan. He's not going to make bones about what he's going to say.
And not just Pakistan, sir. We'll be talking about his other track record as well. There's plenty to be said about it. But first, let's talk about the 7 companies that have been sanctioned by the US, sir. This list identifies entities reasonably believed to be involved or to pose a significant risk of being or becoming involved in activities contrary to the national security or foreign policy interests of the United States. Now, that is a very strange statement, sir, because we have our own national security issues and our own foreign policy issues to deal with as well. So we cannot forego our own national interest in the interest of some other foreign country, can we, sir?
No, we cannot. I haven't gone through the portfolios of these companies, and I really don't know why they have been sanctioned. Perhaps they might be peddling in stuffs which the United States of America considers contraband, or which they might feel would be supplementing Pakistan's nuclear program. I really don't know. And the United States has been sanctioning companies not only of Pakistan, they've been
all over the world.
Russian companies also,
Singaporean
Iranian
companies.
That Singaporean company had some
links with the Pakistani company as well.
But I don't know what is the reason, but I'm sure
there are African countries that are also
they're Africa.
in the
South
list.
Sudan. South Sudan incidentally happens to be a creation of the West, so I do not know why they've banned those companies. They could have banned companies in main Sudan, but South Sudan, why did they do that? I really don't know. So those 7 companies that they've sanctioned, I really don't know
what link do you think it has with the NSG effect? Because some media reports suggest that the additions could affect Pakistan's chances of joining the nuclear suppliers group.
If they're able to prove without any shred of doubt that these companies were involved in illegal or illicit nuclear trade, then they can cite that as something against Pakistan, because Pakistan has been claiming, as my colleague pointed out, that Yukio Amano.
Absolutely, sir. I was going to come to that because that's a very pertinent point.
They said Pakistan has strong
I would actually like to quote.
Please go ahead.
He said, while addressing the seminar in Karachi, he told the audience that your country, Pakistan, is an experienced user of peaceful nuclear technology. He further said that it was clear that you, Pakistan, have the knowledge and the pool of people who are dedicated to do this job. And what more is there? What more do they expect us to do?
Yes, and as Chima Saab correctly pointed out, Pakistan has been attending the nuclear security summits, the 4 nuclear security summits which happened under the watch of Obama, because Obama probably wanted to leave behind a legacy of nuclear zero. Or
and previously we've heard in all these years, sir, that Pakistan's command and control system of the nuclear is second to none, and it's like top notch.
Good. And one of our former prime ministers, Yusuf Raza Gilani, had actually offered the world Pakistan expertise in nuclear fuel cycle. We have been saying and proving, and Yukio Amano is on record in saying that Pakistan's nuclear safety and security credentials are impeccable. So if you are trying to dig out dirt about Pakistan, then there is somebody who has intentions of putting Pakistan in bad light when Pakistan also asks for the membership of the Nuclear Suppliers Group, because Nuclear Suppliers Group is supposed to monitor and control the nuclear
But sir,
trade.
one of the prerequisites for joining the NSG is to be a signatory of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT. So Pakistan and India are both not signatories.
But if you're convinced that India does deserve to be part of the Nuclear Suppliers Group, then you can say that although they have not signed the NPT, but their track record is good, whereas Pakistan track record is bad.
How is it bad, sir? There's no way they can prove that. But they can just make the claim.
They can claim,
That's what
but
we've been seeing.
they can talk ad nauseum about AQ Khan. Although we have tried to shed this albatross across our neck, around our neck, by saying that we had nothing to do with him, and if, God forbid, we had some linkages with him, we have tried to remove those linkages, and we are pursuing or adopting or adhering to all acceptable norms of nuclear non-proliferation. We are doing everything possible to make sure that our nuclear assets do not fall into wrong hands. We are not sharing our nuclear knowledge with any countries which has nuclear ambitions, whether within the NPT or outside the NPT. But again, world is double standards. They will accept the Indian claims to nuclear celibacy and the Israeli claims to being a safe nuclear country, but not with Pakistan. So perhaps you can say that they cannot tolerate any Islamic country. It's a claim which unfortunately I don't want to subscribe to, that we always say that there's nothing to do with Islam. It's our country's self-defense. The nuclear deterrence is only meant to keep India at bay. We have got nothing, no truck with any other country. We just don't want the Indians to cross our red lines and attack us. We don't want India to actuate their...
Which they've been threatening to do over the past, ever since the BJP government came into power. So we have concerns.
And earlier too, and after that also.
And also the line of control, where we have over 170 violations just in the first month of 2018. What else can we do?
Absolutely.
Chiva Saab, now let's move on to the other interesting news item of the week, I would say, and that is the appointment of Mr. John Bolton as the National Security Advisor. Mr. Bolton has been perceived as a neocon, and he was with George W. Bush. He was instrumental in pushing the United States into invading Iraq. And Times editorial had this to say about him. I'd like to share it. Mr. Bolton, in particular, believes that the United States can do what it wants without regard to international law, treaties, or the political commitment of previous administrations. He also advocates preemptive strike against North Korea. Now, with a man like that, also followed very closely by Mr. Pompeo, the CIA director, so you have a coterie of people who are like more hawkish than the hawks, and this is the kind of people that Mr. Trump has surrounded himself with. What does that say about things to come?
Well, I think if you have people from CIA, the State Department, what State Department will work? And I think the actual role of the State Department will be reduced, which has already been reduced. I think we have been talking on it, that there has been some sort of militarization of diplomacy in Washington. The generals have taken over everything. I had an interaction with the American journalist a couple of weeks ago, and I asked this question, that do you believe that there is some sort of militarization of diplomacy in Washington and the generals have taken over? And I said, yes, we have this impression. The generals are powerful. They're powerful everywhere, since the Americans have waged wars, Americans need army, they need soldiers, so they have too much influence. And one of the reasons President Trump, to show himself he's patriotic, he used this leverage while during his campaign, that he has some 200 generals on his side who were supporting his campaign. So once he came into office, you might have seen if the majority of the people who have been working in White House or in personal staff, they have been the former generals, and they are trying to influence the policy. So that particular tussle that is between the State Department and the Defense Department, I think that the State Department has actually lost its battle of diplomacy. Recently we have seen that although Pakistan has been talking time and again, you need to use diplomacy as a tool in Afghanistan, but recently they have said that yes, we can address Pakistan's concern, and we can let the diplomacy to be a tool to deal with the Taliban, and we can have the Afghans together. So I think having Mr. John Bolton in such kind of a very critical position, all what matters is that President Trump actually believed that he's not having very experienced people for the job. if that is one of the advantage of the presidential form of the system, that you actually pick the right person for the right job, even while forgetting anything, because you have to have all those, because all those people are not part of the Congress or the part of the parliament in any country. So the President Trump might have taken more serious people, and these people who have experience in military or experience in CIA, and giving them a role in diplomacy or in politics, that would be catastrophic. And as Brigadier Sir was mentioning, that he has been nuclear hawk. So as you were mentioning, that he believes that we should go for a strike on North Korea. So such kind of, and then while going for a strike on North Korea, they have managed to meet with the leaders of the North Korea. It is said that Donald Trump is going to meet with them. But I think there is some sort of a twist. Either they are going to go for a strike, or they're going to meet with Mr. Kim. That will be seen in coming days, definitely. But I think the hawks, and you just cannot challenge President Trump if the hawks are around the corner. You cannot have them. You cannot stop them. If the president is powerful enough, he can change his 3 director communications. He can change his chief of staff. He can change, and this all happens in just 1 year. And I think there's more than 18 people. I was reading a list to whom he changed, even including his,
Not including those that left him voluntarily.
So I think nobody knows that where the one who leaves, where he leaves, what he leaves for the next person, what would the strategy has left, and what the new person has to do. So I think these are the things which for people like in Pakistan, they get frustrated what is going to happen. If you remember, the Pakistan, Afghanistan, or the South Asia strategy of the Americans came 7 months after the president took the oath. So where does the Afghanistan, Pakistan, or South Asia falls in the White House scheme of things? So this is something where we here who actually want peace in Afghanistan, and we actually believe that we want the American attention in this conflict zone, and we are just waiting, monitoring, and then the scheme of all that, when it comes, it is all against what we were thinking. So all what we can say is that we can hope for the better, but things are going to be very, very strange in coming months and week, and Pakistan will have to brace up, and the more such hawks can be in the American administration.
What suggestions would you make for the powers that be in Pakistan? How should they face the coming onslaught?
Well, I think I have been talking on it for long, that I think Pakistan have to have more effective, more proactive role in this. We waited for the time when the American administration comes up with the program on South Asia or Afghanistan, Pakistan. We waited for the time. And for those 7 months, we didn't lobby in Washington. And I remember every think tank in Washington, Waqas Sahab, every think tank, from you go into Washington, New York, all these policy circles, every think tank was coming a report on Pakistan, on Afghanistan, on nuclear, and majority of the reports were anti-Pakistan, and they were all lobbying in State Department, Pentagon, and White House. And there was no counter narrative in Washington. Who is speaking for us? Mr. Hussain Haqqani is speaking for us. If he's speaking for us, what is speaking for us? So he's considered as a darling in American media because of his very certain remarks about Pakistan. So we were not aware that how we have to deal with. So we have to be very much proactive there. Although the Pakistani embassy in Washington spends more money as compared to the other embassies, but I think as when it comes to the outcome, or when it comes to the understanding that how things are shifting in our way,
or the desired results,
or the desired result, that is not what is favorable for us.
There's a lot lacking in that.
Yes, and I think the political administration here in Pakistan, they do not have personal contacts with the political leaders in the United States. That matters a lot. When you go to the United States, you don't have personal contacts, and the way effectively and proactively we are dealing with the Americans since the last 70 years, we didn't deal with anyone. But even then, our political leadership does not have personal contacts. That matters a lot. When American leadership used to come in Pakistan, for example, for the Raymond Davis case, and they used to say that, look, this John Kerry, he has some personal relationship with the Pakistan, and he's going to take away the things. But these kind of relationships do not help Pakistan. And I think the political leadership, we don't know how things will work. for example, the ruling, the government in Pakistan, they need to be more active in this.
All right, sir, let's talk a bit more about Mr. Bolton's credentials. Mr. Bolton is also a long-time critic of the deal with Iran that successfully halted their nuclear enrichment program. He thinks that the US should tear up that agreement signed by Mr. Barack Obama and destroy Iranian military sites. And this is also in line with Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu's position, given the Israelis' close relationship with Mr. Trump. Bolton is a very staunch supporter of Israel, and how do you think that's going to play out, sir, for the region, especially the Middle East, and when it comes to Iran, dealing with the US and Iran equation? That's also going to create problems for Pakistan.
So, one qualification of Bolton being elected, nominated the new NSA is that he selected, nominated, whatever, replacing McMaster, is that he says what Trump says and Trump likes. But I think all people in this category, their bark is usually worse than their bite. Because if you want to really do something, you don't make noise about it, you do it. I do not know whether the United States of America is in a position to open up another front with Iran, a kinetic front, attacking them physically. They are already embroiled in Afghanistan in a big way. They are still grappling with issues in Iraq and Syria. So I don't really think that they will be able to attack. Yes, tearing up the document, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action could be one thing, but then there are 5 more partners to it, which includes China, Russia, Germany. Yes, there are 5 more countries, including Germany.
Right.
The 5 permanent members plus Germany. So they, all of them say that they do not want the document to be destroyed. So can United States of America go it alone? And then the Congress is there also, because there is a 60-day notice. Trump has already said that he's going to pull out of it, but whether the Congress is going to ratify what Mr. Trump says, I do not know. I have not done the arithmetic there. So Bolton certainly is a dangerous man. He's got dangerous ideas, but whether he'll be allowed to do what he wants, I do not know, because the establishment in the United States of America is also very strong. The Pentagon, the Ministry of Defense, the State Department.
Mr. Bolton is also a very fierce critic of the United Nations, sir. He was famously said once that if the New York headquarters lost 10 stories, it would be no great loss. So what does that say to you, sir?
That means that the United States of America, which currently provides 22% of the United Nations budget, may start decreasing it. But when you stop paying United Nations what is due to you...
They already did that, sir. Mr. Trump has withheld payments from the United Nations earlier on. He was not unhappy about something.
Time to time. But once you withhold payments, then you lose your leverage with that world body also. The mere fact that the United States of America wanted this world body to be established in New York meant that they wanted to have influence over world affairs, and they were, to begin with, the de facto world government, although during the Cold War this was contested by the USSR, but they were very fond of declaring themselves as the leader of the free world, and the POTUS being the strongest person on this earth, things of that sort. So they have these delusions, or shall we say,
their American philosophy of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Where do you think that stands, sir?
That goes in parallel, but they want to rule the world in John Wayne style, and Mr. Trump is living incarnation.
Well, sir, I'd also like to add here that Mr. Mike Pompeo, the incoming Secretary of State, is also known to have views similar or even more extreme than Mr. Trump's on a wide number of foreign policy issues. Both he and Mr. Bolton will lean harder than ever on Pakistan, and in this they will have the entire Trump administration behind them. Chimasab, things are not looking very nice from here.
I think we have never seen nice things since Trump is in office, but definitely we have to deal with them. There has been some sort of understanding that here in Pakistan, Rawalpindi and Washington are working good, and Islamabad and Washington are not working that good. But I think this is how that we were talking about the diplomacy and the political elite. They need to discuss that how we can get together with them and how we can discuss how can we resolve all outstanding issues.
You already spoke about that. I want to get Yamin Saab's opinion, sir, that the perception which Qamar Chima Saab has also articulated, sir, is that Pakistan has been losing friends at an alarming rate on Capitol Hill. And now there is a solid consensus encompassing politicians, army generals, and the media that we've been supporting the Taliban and the Haqqani network in Afghanistan, and the same old accusations that they keep pulling out of the closet and thrusting on Pakistan. So how are we going to deal with that?
If we have a policy, if we have a good policy about the Pak-US relations, Pak-Russia relations, Pak-Iran relations, if we have a policy, if we have a good policy, if we have a policy which we think can work, things can work, all right. As Qamar Chima Saab very correctly pointed out, we've got to be proactive. Things have been bad. Pakistan has been in the doghouse before. Pakistan has seen worst situations. We have been slammed with sanctions like the Pressler Amendment, and we lost our F-16s, we lost our naval ships. So we have been in tight corners before. These things should be studied, and how we got out of them. There are reasons. There are always silver linings. So I think the United States of America alone can not throw us into the dungeon. I think we are still a nation which can survive, and we can improve our relations. I think even with the worst of enemies, we can improve relations. I'm not a career diplomat, but I'm sure if I had been a career diplomat, I would have written a paper on it.
And how important do you think, sir, is it for us to, as we've been hearing a lot over the past couple of years, getting our own house in order?
Yes.
How important is that to actually achieve our wider foreign policy goals?
That is number one issue. We should get our own house in order. Otherwise, we will be at the mercy of all our
the whims of others.
Foes and friends.
Right, sir. So we leave it at that. Thank you very much for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, you heard the conversation, and in conclusion, we always like to say that we hope for better days ahead, and we are living in interesting times, and we hope that they don't get any more interesting. With that hope, and on that note, it's goodbye.
Today, the